Section 2.6, Dividing Fractions. Before we start dividing fractions, we need to talk about an important word called a reciprocal. The reciprocal of a fraction is simply a flip of the numerator and the denominator. So let's say that you are given the fraction 3/4. The reciprocal of 3/4 is just 4/3. We are just going to flip the numerator and the denominator. 3/4 and 4/3 are fractions that are known as reciprocals of one another. Remember, we talked earlier that if you have a whole number, let's say the whole number 5, 5 can be written as a fraction. It could be written as 5/1. So we can also give the reciprocal of 5. The reciprocal of 5 means we are just going to first write it as the fraction 5/1, and then we are going to flip the numerator and denominator, so we are going to have 1/5. This even works if you have a mixed number. If you have the mixed number 1 2/3, we can first change that into a fraction, an improper fraction, by using the process of multiplying. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 gives me 5. So if I want to change the mixed number 1 2/3 to an improper fraction, it is 5/3. The reciprocal of 5/3 is just 3/5. And we will be using this idea as we talk about dividing fractions. One last thing to talk about before we actually start dividing with fractions. If you are given the problem 8 divided by 2, you know that 8 divided by 2 is equal to 4. If you divide something by 2, isn't it the same as taking half of it? In other words, 8 divided by 2 is equal to 4, but couldn't I also take half of 8 and say it's the same thing as 8 times 1/2? Because half of 8 is also equal to 4. This is an important point to note, because I want you to notice that I divided by 2 or I multiplied by 1/2. I changed my division problem into a multiplication problem. And what I did in order to do that is I kept the first numbers the same, the 8 and the 8, but what I did is I changed to multiplication and I took the reciprocal of my 2, and that's 1/2. Remember, 2 as a fraction is 2/1. The reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. So if I have a division problem, I can change it to a multiplication problem by multiplying by the reciprocal of the second number, which is the divisor. We are going to use this idea when we divide with fractions. So let's say you were given the problem 1/3 divided by 4/7. I'm not going to do that as a division problem. I'm going to change it to a multiplication problem. In order to do that, the first fraction stays the same. I'm going to change it to a multiplication problem by multiplying by the reciprocal of the second number, which is the divisor. So instead of multiplying that by 4/7, I'm going to multiply by 7/4. Now I can just multiply straight across. 1 times 7 is 7. 3 times 4 gives me 12. My final answer to this problem is 7/12. So 1/3 divided by 4/7 gives me an answer of 7/12. Let's do another one. 3/5 divided by 6/7. I'm going to change that to a multiplication problem. So the first number stays the same, 3/5. I change the second number to 7/6, and I multiply. Now once again, I can just go straight across and multiply, but I notice that I have a 3 and a 6, which has a common factor of 3. So I'm going to divide both of those by 3. 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. Now I can go across and I can multiply. 1 times 7 is 7. 5 times 2 is 10, so the final answer to that is 7/10. One thing to note here, I have to change it to multiplication before I can do any of the canceling that I did here in the red. Make sure that you change to multiplication first, and then you can go through and do the canceling. Let's look at dividing a mixed number by a mixed number. I have 2 3/8 divided by 1 3/4. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change both of those mixed numbers into improper fractions. To change the first one, 8 times 2 is 16, plus 3 gives me 19. So, as an improper fraction, the first one is 19/8. The second one is 1 3/4. I'm going to change. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7, so I get 7/4. So all I did is I changed both of those from mixed number form into an improper fraction form. Now I still have a division problem, which I am going to change into a multiplication problem. So I have 19/8 times, I'm going to take the reciprocal of 7/4, and I am going to get 4/7. I could once again go straight across and multiply, but I notice as I am doing that I have a common factor of 4 with the 4 and the 8. So 4 divided by 4 gives me 1, 8 divided by 4 gives me 2. And now I'm going to go straight across and multiply. 19 times 1 gives me 19, 2 times 7 gives me 14. But 19/14 is an improper fraction, which I need to go through and I need to change back into a mixed number. So I'm going to divide 19 divided by 14. 14 goes into 19 one time. 1 times 14 is 14. I subtract, I get 5. So my final answer to this problem is 1 5/14. Let's do a mixed number divided by a whole number. We're going to use exactly the same process. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change that mixed number into an improper fraction. So 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 gives me 9. So it's an improper fraction, I get 9/5. I have that divided by 6, which I'm going to write as the fraction 6/1. Now I need to change that to a multiplication. So I have 9/5 times 1/6. Notice again that I have a 9 and a 6 that has a common factor of 3. 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. 9 divided by 3 gives me 3. So I'm going to reduce that 9/6 down to 3/2, and now I'm going to multiply straight across. 3 times 1 gives me 3, 5 times 2 gives me 10, and 3/10 is in lowest terms. So that is my final answer. Sometimes when dividing fractions, the fractions are written a little bit differently. This really is 3/4 divided by 9/10. I have a fraction inside a fraction. It's known as a complex fraction. But in order to do this, I'm just going to rewrite it the other way. This is 3/4 divided by 9/10. So I'm just going to write 3/4 divided by 9/10, and now I'm going to use exactly the same process. The first fraction just stays the same, 3/4. I'm going to change it to multiplication, and instead of 9/10, I'm going to multiply by 10/9. Before I just go straight across and multiply, I'm going to see if I can reduce anything, and I notice that I can. So I have a 3 and a 9 that both have a common factor of 3. 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. 9 divided by 3 gives me 3. I also take a look at my 4 and my 10. My 4 and my 10 have a common factor. So I'm going to divide both of those by 2, the common factor. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. Now I can go straight across and multiply. 1 times 5 gives me 5. 2 times 3 gives me 6. So the final answer to this problem is 5/6. Once you have the understanding that dividing fractions can easily be done by multiplying the reciprocal of the second number or by the divisor, division of fractions will hopefully not be a major cause of concern. But remember, I want to help you with any questions you have, so please be sure to check with me if I can help in any way. Thank you.